Vous écoutez RM1 Nord-Sud 98.9, Centre 97.3, Est-Ouest 91.7. It's 9 o'clock. The news presented by Ayrece Stewart. Good morning, Ayrece.
Good morning, Sophie.
And the headlines.
Government moves forward with phase 2 of the Price Stabilization Fund as Minister meets consumer associations to identify new products for subsidies. Prime Minister Navin Ramgoolam begins his working day in Varanasi with high-level talks and agreements expected before attending the sacred Ganga Aarti ceremony and state banquet. Former SST Chief Ashik Jagai faces fresh charges of breaching bail and witness tampering as the FCC opposes his release. Concerns grow over recurring medicine shortages as doctors continue prescribing unavailable brands. In world news, conservative commentator Charlie Kirk assassinated during a rally in Utah. And in sports news, Mauritian rider claims victory in the opening stage of the Tour Chantal Biya in Cameroon. This Thursday, Minister Michael Sekyuan will chair a meeting bringing together consumer associations as well as the Mauritius Chamber of Commerce and Industry for Phase 2 of the Price Stabilization Fund. On the table are the potential products that could benefit from support measures aimed at containing the rising cost of living. The first phase had resulted in subsidies on powdered milk, cooking oil, cheese, infant formula and baby diapers. Anjali Siratan-Pulchan tells us more in this report by Didier Rose.
Today's meeting, chaired by Minister Michael Sekyuan, aims to establish a list of products likely to be subsidized. Once this list is finalized, a follow-up meeting will take place with the Ministry of Finance in order to assess the budgetary impact and the feasibility of the proposals. The document will then be submitted to an interministerial committee, which will examine the main points and, if necessary, make adjustments. Finally, it will be up to the Council of Ministers to decide and give its final approval. According to estimates, this process will take at least 2 to 3 weeks before reaching a conclusion. Minister Michael Sekyuan emphasized that the government's intention is to extend support measures for consumers, particularly for essential goods. The creation of a dedicated committee will ensure constant dialogue between the state, the private sector and consumer associations in order to define a clear roadmap for the second phase of the Price Stabilization Fund.
Arriving yesterday evening in Varanasi in the state of Uttar Pradesh, the Mauritian Prime Minister will today hold a one-on-one with his Indian counterpart. Dr. Navin Ramgoolam and Narendra Modi are expected to address the press following a working session. A meeting with the ministerial delegation accompanying him on his state visit is also on the agenda, as well as the signing of several memorandums of understanding. This working day for the Prime Minister will begin with a meeting with the Foreign Secretary. In the early evening, Dr. Navin Ramgoolam will attend a prayer ceremony on the banks of the Ganges, the Ganga Aarti, a sacred ritual honoring the holy river through mantras and the lighting of lamps. A banquet will then be hosted by the governor of the state. And in the news again, Ashik Jagai back in police custody. He now faces 2 provisional charges, breach of bail conditions and witness tampering under Section 141 of the Financial Crimes Commission Act. The FCC is opposing his release. The former head of the SST is this time being held in one of the country's strictest detention facilities. Anjali Siratan-Pulchan tells us more.
After 20 days of detention at the Mocha Detention Centre, this time it was at the Line Barracks Detention Centre that Ashik Jagai was placed yesterday. The reason? The suspended police superintendent, arrested in the so-called Reward Money affair, is now suspected of having intimidated a witness into making a statement in favour of his son, Ali Saheb Amir Saheb, who is being held on alleged money laundering charges. The events are said to have taken place between September 3 and 5. In the presence of his lawyer, Maître Axel Ritchie-Bactois, Ashik Jagai, former head of the now-defunct SST, denied these accusations and handed over his phone to the FCC's Digital Forensic Laboratory. He will remain in detention at least until September 15, the date set for the hearing of his bail application. His lawyer has also requested that he be placed alone in a cell equipped with surveillance cameras.
Also making headlines this morning, the shortage of medicines in Mauritius, a matter that raises concerns. This all the more so as several doctors pay little attention when prescribing and continue to recommend brands that are unavailable in pharmacies, a frustrating situation that often forces you to go back for another consultation. According to Bibi Wahida Gopi, Acting Director of Pharmaceutical Services, in many cases there are alternatives because while some medicines are indeed unavailable, others containing the necessary molecules for treatment can be used instead. And in other news, 24 years on, the images remain engraved in our memories. The Twin Towers in flames, panic in the streets of New York, and a nation struck at its very heart. On September 11, 2001, the United States suffered the worst terrorist attack in its history. Nearly 3,000 lives cut short in just a few hours. A tragedy that shook the planet and reshaped the global geopolitical landscape. Lovina Sophie tells us more.
It all began on a Tuesday morning, ordinary for millions of Americans. At 8:46 a.m., a passenger plane crashed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center in New York. 17 minutes later, a second aircraft slammed into the South Tower. There was no longer any doubt it was a coordinated terrorist attack. Moments later, at 9:37 a.m., a third plane struck the Pentagon, the nerve center of American defense just outside Washington. A fourth aircraft, United Flight 93, never reached its target, likely the White House or the Capitol. It crashed into a field in Pennsylvania after passengers attempted to regain control of the plane. Less than 2 hours after the first impact, the Twin Towers collapsed in an apocalyptic row. A cloud of dust engulfed Manhattan. Thousands fled in panic while firefighters and rescuers threw themselves into the rubble to save lives. The toll was devastating, nearly 3,000 dead and more than 6,000 injured. Very quickly, President George Bush vowed a response proportionate to the attack. The war on terror was launched in October 2001. American troops invaded Afghanistan to overthrow the Taliban accused of harboring Osama bin Laden and his network Al-Qaeda. Beyond the United States, September 11 reshaped global security, airport controls tightened, anti-terrorism policies were reinforced, and international relations entered a new era defined by the fear of similar attacks. 24 years later, remembrance ceremonies are still held every year. In New York, the names of the victims are read one by one, a reminder that behind the numbers were lives, families, and shattered destinies. September 11 remains an open wound in the collective memory, a day that changed America and the entire world forever.
And it's 9:08. You're listening to RM1. We move international now. We're in the US yesterday as well. Conservative commentator Charlie Kirk, a close ally of President Donald Trump, was shot dead during a rally at the University of Utah. Aged 31, the founder of the organization Turning Point USA was struck in the neck in front of some 3,000 people. Governor Spencer Cox described it as a political assassination. The shooter is believed to have acted from a rooftop and remains at large despite the arrest and subsequent release of a suspect by the FBI. Donald Trump has ordered American flags to be flown at half-mast until Sunday, paying tribute to an activist he considered essential to his movement. And finally, in sports, victory for Alexandre Meyer in the first stage of the Tour Chantal Biya in Cameroon. The Mauritian thus takes on the leader's jersey. It is also an opportunity for him to accumulate UCI points. The competition runs throughout this week ahead of the World Championships at the end of September. And in other sports news, football in Africa with the 2026 World Cup qualifiers. In Group C, Benin claimed a convincing 4-0 victory over Lesotho yesterday. Thanks to this win, the Beninis move back to within 3 points of the leader, South Africa. These qualifying matches will resume on October 6. That's all from me this morning. Thanks so much for tuning in. Stay tuned now to the Intermeet playlist until 10 a.m.